This guy needs help. And not just because he's made of cheese. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. Omen, as I'm sure you guys know, is the newest character in Paladins, even though he was released over 6 months ago. Oh my gosh, time flies. But Omen used to be a very, very good character. On release, he was particularly strong, although he did have one bug holding him back. Then they fixed that bug, and for a while, he was S tier. And to address that, well, they've ended up nuking him into the ground, and he has not recovered since, and it's been a while since they've touched him. It almost seems like they've forgotten about this character, and there have been calls from many, many people to actually try and fix this character. So I want to break down in this video what the problem is, what caused this problem in the first place, and what they should do to fix it, because honestly, it's pretty clear-cut with his character, the problem with him, and that is all pertaining to his weapon. You see, Omen has a very unique weapon. He is the only damage character with a shotgun, and he also has the ability to wind this shotgun down into a very precise rifle, but he has to fire multiple shots to do it. So the first few shots are a shotgun, and it slowly winds down into this precise rifle stance. And if you switch reticle, fun fact, to the circle reticle, you'll actually be able to see the exact spread that this character has. So it starts out with this giant circle, and then you can see it wind down into this rifle stance. And, you know, on paper, that's all well and good, and he actually has very good DPS on paper. Look at that. That is actually really fast. But the problem lies when you actually talk about his spread. If I just shoot at this range, you can see how big the spread is compared to Ying. And yeah, most of the pellets are missing her. So, at close range, this isn't even medium range, at close range, we end up doing very variable damage, where for one shot there we did 500, but for some of the others we're doing like 250, 250. Okay, that was a bit more consistent on Victor, but then there's 125, 190, 63, 125, 500. It's basically RNG-based damage, is how it feels like, and that's pretty much unlike every other character in the game. Even other shotgun characters such as Buck and Barrack do much more consistent damage in close and medium range, and so this is a big problem that holds Omen back. And it's honestly because I'm pretty sure his shotgun is the only real shotgun in the game, in the sense that they truly programmed it to be so that it counts the amount of pellets that hit the target, and, well, if you don't hit a lot of pellets, then you don't do a lot of damage. And it has randomized spread, so if we just get back here and shoot the wall, you'll see that each time, the bullets fire in a completely different pattern, and in some cases, the spread is actually so great that we're actually firing pellets outside of this circle range. So, yeah, that's that's pretty bad. And so even though on paper his DPS is very high, in practice, especially when targets are moving around, skinny targets especially like Leon or Evie, then he's just not doing damage, and so he has to wind down into this rifle fire stance. And this rifle fire stance is very consistent damage. It kind of makes him on par with Leon. I mean, look at that. The fall off is very good, the accuracy is very good. But the fact is, you have to end up wasting ammo in order to get down into this rifle phase. And you also have to waste precious seconds, whereas other characters can just shoot you at medium to long range just fine without having any sort of wind-up at all. So it ends up being a big problem for him, where even though he does have, theoretically, some pretty good range, it's also not very consistent. And also there's another bug where if you shoot just right on the fringe of a character with this rifle stance, you can still miss some of the pellets. As you saw right there, I did 250 damage to Fernando, even though I was technically aiming at him. You would think that that winded down phase would be kind of similar to Binary Star Genos, since Omen is meant to be an echo character of Genos. But in fact, it's not. It's still technically a shotgun, and so there is inconsistency even when you're in that rifle stance. Historically, Omen's inconsistency has been fixed by using the talent Umbra Lance. Back around the time of his release, this talent was different. It made it so that he was permanently in the rifle phase, and he was just constantly shoot that. It was pretty straightforward. It was basically Binary Star but for Omen, and it was really, really good. It did make him objectively overpowered. But the way they decided to go about fixing this was instead to rework the talent to actually make it end up nerfing Omen. And that's what I want to talk about here, where Umbra Lance has been programmed in a way that it actually makes you worse. So let's just read what this does. Aphotic Reaver, is no longer ramps down. God, they can't... they can't even get the grammar right. But its spread is reduced by 50%, and its fire rate is reduced by 30%. So the idea is, you have a very consistent sort of in-between mode for your shotgun, where now, you see that the spread is much tighter. Well, at least for that first shot there, I don't know what happened, but now we're at this spread. So it's much tighter. This is honestly, I would say, much more akin to something like Buck. And that is pretty nice. It allows them to be much more consistent, but you still have some inconsistencies, as you saw there. I did do 250. I did 250 there to Fernando. So, yeah, it requires precision, and even then, if you are precise, you'll still end up doing less damage versus some skinny targets. So, it's not perfect, but the real major downside of this is that even though, yeah, your shots are a lot more precise, the slowed down fire rate ends up slowing you down based on the fire rate of your rifle, not the fire rate of your shotgun. So, the idea of this talent was that, oh, you'd be in between your shotgun and your rifle stance. The spread is in between your rifle and your shotgun stance, and will make the fire rate in between the shotgun and the rifle stance as well. But that's not the way it works. Instead, it just takes the slower rifle fire rate and reduces that by 30%. So effectively, it kneecaps your DPS, and you'll notice, yeah, the cadence at which we're shooting here is very slow. And if we go back to the just a regular talent, like Everyone Dies, and we wind down, you see that the rifle cadence is much faster. So, yeah, that's a very big problem for Umbra Lance. And if they were to just adjust the fire rate to be in the middle again, in the middle of the shotgun and the rifle, then you would have a case to run this talent. But as it stands, because the fire rate is so slow, this actually ends up really tanking his DPS, and so, yeah, it's absolutely not worth running this talent. On top of that, they reworked the More card, which worked in tandem with old Umbra Lance to make Omen OP. Without More, Umbra Lance wasn't nearly as strong, and without Umbra Lance, More wasn't really that strong. So it was the combination of these two that made him pretty disgusting. And this got reworked to basically, instead of having the damage scale on the level of the card, the damage stays consistent, and you have to level the card up to get some of your ammo restored. So you see at level 5, we only reduce our max ammo by 6, but at level 1, we reduce it by 10, basically only having a double barrel shotgun. So, yeah, this card, getting reworked, I think ultimately was a good thing, because having that variable amount of damage wasn't really that fair. And as you can see, it does do its job very well. But the problem with using More if you want to try and improve his damage is that, well, you see how little ammo I have? And this is with the card at level 4. If we just bump it up to level 5 for the sake of testing, then we are able to do just 3 shots in the long-ranged mode. And every other shot is going to have that inconsistent damage. So, if we are fighting at, like, medium-ish range here, More doesn't even really fix our damage. And someone like Leon, Shalane, Cassie, etc. will still be able to burst us down pretty effectively. Is it bad? I mean, it's not as bad, I guess, in some cases. But it really is still just so inconsistent and janky. And it's not really fun to play with. So yeah, we know what the problem is, and we know what caused the problem, because when More and Umbra Lance were at their prime, Omen was too strong. He did too much damage, and it was too consistent. And they ended up nerfing both to compensate, and those two nerfs have left him in the gutter now. So what can we do to fix it? Well, simply put, Omen's DPS is good, on paper. And so we don't need to necessarily buff anything about the damage or the fire rate or anything like that, except for making it so that Umbra Lance is properly in the middle of the two fire rates, instead of applying a 30% debuff to the rifle fire rate and thus making it slower than it actually should be. So we don't need to change those numbers. Instead, we need to find a way to make Omen more consistent. Because, again, let me just show you Buck. Because Buck is the closest thing to a damage character with a shotgun. He's a flank, right? And if we just grab Bounce House, we can see that he's got very consistent damage at this medium range. Yes, he has spread. Yes, he has a shotgun. Look at that spread. But his shotgun is programmed in a way that it operates more like a giant hit scan cone with some weird fall-off numbers. But you can see that this is night and day compared to Omen. Omen's damage numbers were all over the place. Sometimes we were getting double digits, sometimes low hundreds, and then sometimes a big wallop of 500. But with Buck, yeah, it's a little bit variable, but there's much tighter variance. And so if they were able to program Omen's shotgun, reprogram it rather, to work more like Buck's shotgun, where, yeah, it's still a bit random, yeah, there's still spread, but it's much more consistent, that would instantly fix a lot of the problems with Omen, and that would be incredible. But I would also go a step further, and I would make it so that when Omen is in his rifle stance, that he doesn't have this problem where you can be hitting on the fringe of somebody and still randomly just, yeah, do like 65, 190, whatever like that. So I would just make it so that when you're in the rifle stance, it just acts like one single pellet. Just like Atlas, for example. Atlas is another character who has a very sort of similar dynamic where he is able to wind up and do one big pellet, or he shoots out multiple pellets with some spread. So it's possible for them to take this multi-pellet projectile that Omen has and turn it into a single shot. That's totally feasible, and I think they should do it. Now, one final thing that we have to talk about with Omen that does need to be fixed is that he still has the bug where he can be locked out of all of his abilities by void gripping someone with just some poor timing. They use an ethereal ability. I don't remember if shields still affect that, but I know ethereal abilities are still a problem for him when it comes to basically locking him out of his abilities. So against characters like Xin is able to, as long as he gets lucky timing, basically disable the Omen player. And that's a very, very big problem. And I have a hypothesis about this, and it's that, well, his grip doesn't actually apply a cripple. You see, his grip is meant to be very similar to Genos' void grip, because again, he's an Echo character, right? But you'll notice, I'm going to play this in slow-mo. You'll see that, well, Genos applies a very, 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 very small cripple with his void grip by default. And this stops enemies from using their movement abilities or anything like that the moment that they get void gripped. And I think that this might be stopping Genos from getting locked out in the same way, because a lot of these abilities that are really causing grief for Omen are things like Grok's Ghostwalk and Xin's Billow, both of which are movement abilities. And so if we go over to Omen here, and just use Everyone Dies, for example, and I'll play it in slow-mo again, you'll notice that there is no cripple. So it's an ability that's meant to interrupt movement abilities, but it does so in a weird way where it's not actually applying a cripple. And I think if it applied just a regular bog standard cripple like Genos did, then it might end up helping the issue somewhat. And at the very least, it would make it more consistent, and especially make it consistent with, you know, his Echo Genos, right? Because he's an Echo character. It's just a thought, but it's something that I noticed, and I remember someone pointing out to me, but I can't remember who. But yeah, it is possibly something that could help. Otherwise, I don't know. I'm not a programmer. I don't work at evil Mojo Studios, contrary to popular belief. I'm not actually Mr. Paladins in that sense. No Ying. Sorry, Ying. But yeah, I think that about wraps it up for today's video. I think that covers pretty much everything that is a problem with Omen right now. His abilities are fine. Like, this is fine, even if it's a bit counterintuitive because he's throwing someone away when he has a shotgun. His ultimate is fine if you want to combo it with your Void Grip. That's all well and good. I actually threw her out of it in that case. And yeah, it can lead to some very fun gameplay for the people who are into this type of thing. But yeah, he really just has a fundamental consistency issue with his shotgun, and he still has a major bug plaguing him, and if both of them get fixed, then I think Omen will climb back up to being in a pretty solid spot in the meta. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, of course, in the comment section down below. Do you agree with my assessment of Omen, or do you think something different is broken about him? Or do you think he's fine in his current state? I don't, but yeah, let me know all that in the comment section down below. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. And also, if you want to support the channel, please consider making your next crystal purchase over at my Nexus. Nexus.gg/AndrewChicken, link is in the description. You can buy crystals there, and then just go right on over into your profile here in Paladins, type in the code, and you'll get your crystals just fine. Just go right here, and then right here, and then right here, and then boom. Oh, I'm clicking things. And yeah, it's as easy as that. It's officially affiliated with Evil Mojo, and a portion of the proceeds go directly to supporting the channel, so it's a great way to support me and keep me making content. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.